Good afternoon, everyone. North Atlantic sea surface temperatures down. This would be the Atlantic 60-year cycle. They don't talk about that in the climate debate too much. But these next successive water pulses entering the Arctic are going to be cooler and cooler, which would explain why it's growing sea ice. It's just not going to melt from beneath. Now, with all these gargantuan changes coming to our food growing across the planet, you can see why Syscoin, the third Anonymity coin, was just hacked. Yellow boxes are the ones that have been hacked. The rest of the list is Anonymity coins, which allow you to buy, sell, trade anonymously. Digital wealth management, meaning cryptocurrency, expected to eclipse 1 trillion by 2022. Problem is, millennials, they're not buying gold. They don't trust banks. They don't trust the stock market. They're going into crypto. But anonymity coins, you can't tax that either. Sovereign cryptocurrencies, meaning national governments issuing their own, blistering pace in this. But Japan outright bans all anonymity coins. I wonder why. Beyond the tax is all Bitcoin transactions, Bitcoin futures, ETFs in the stock market, that can all be taxed and traced. But the underlying layer, which I really believe in my own opinion, is this National Defense Resources Preparedness Act, Executive Order 13603 from Obama. The national government can confiscate anything and everything, and you better be careful not to flag your purchases. Looking out to the solar activity forecast up to 2045, declines below 50 sunspots, let's bring that in. We're looking at something like a 1.5 degrees Celsius drop planet temperature-wise. We see this in the ice cores, that volcanic ash layer. These are cycles. More ice on Greenland, which is an outlier. Nobody wants to talk about this. But your anonymity to protect yourself while you get ready for the grand solar minimum is of utmost importance. Choose wisely. And during this time, you're absolutely going to need to grow some of your own food to supplement these rising food prices. Radish sprouts, sunflower sprouts, you can grow those indoors. Learn how long it takes to sprout out a batch before you can eat it. And the Adapt 2030 link for trueleafmarket.com, as well as the links to all of tonight's images and stories, are in the description box below. Start you off over here in the North Atlantic. And it's pretty much well known through the climate circles, if you will, that Atlantic water temperatures drive the northern hemispheric temperatures. Let's take a look first here at sea surface temperature anomalies, global. But I really wanted to focus in on the North Atlantic because this is what's causing the rebound in sea ice this year. So to show you the boundary areas on the map, now over to the left side here, we have the United States and Canada, the Maritimes, and then sort of in the center, that's the very tip south of Greenland. And then when we move over to the right side of the chart, you'll see Western Africa, Spain, and then parts of England, Scotland, Ireland there. Now, first to note, these are in degrees Celsius, which is far deeper in the cooling than Fahrenheit. So I thought, okay, it's great to see it visually, but can we find it in a chart form? So here we go, showing you the temperatures below baseline at 0.0, that black line through the center, that's the actual baseline, if you will. 1981 to 2010 average. Notice the cooling that's coming off since, let's say, late April into July as we speak, July 8th. Please understand that this North Atlantic, it's called the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. It's on a 60-year cycle. Now, they don't talk much about this in the climate debate, so let me widen it out here. This goes from 1850 up to our present day. Now, you can see it's up and down, in its 60-year cycle. Now, this Atlantic water temperatures also drives surface temperatures, and it also is responsible for the amount of ice that's in the Arctic. And amazingly, when we look at the 1930s, when we had the Dust Bowl era, it was at a high as well. Now everybody's talking about melting sea ice, and look, it was at a high as well. I wonder if there's any correlation. But anyway, back to the visual graphic here. Now that blue, what you see up there, that's the water that's going to be forced into the Arctic Circle. Now what I mean by that, this is great research by David Dilley, who I'd also done an interview with. He's in my playlist. You can check that out. Epic 2 hours of us talking about how these Arctic water pulses are going to affect the amount of sea ice, and in turn, how cold that will make the winter further down in North America and also Europe. Now, if we go way back to the 1990s, we can take a look and see that that water pulsing up there was at least 1 degree Celsius above the baseline in that prior chart that I showed you. And then in 1999, it was 1.2 Celsius above that baseline. So, of course, that's warmer water under the ice, which was melting it from beneath, as well as the surface temperatures above. So you had a pancake melting effect, if you will, from beneath and above. Now we're coming into what I just showed you with that cooler water pulse going in there. That's a degree below. So what's going to happen? Let's take a look. 2018, July 7th. There's much more ice up there in terms of thickness. See, that's what they're not talking about. They can try to fool you with the numbers on the edges, but they're not talking about thickness. And I always wonder why. Because when you're looking at the red at 4.5 meters, those of you in the United States, that's 13 feet thick. That's even on coastal up there as well. Center, that green, that's still 9 feet thick. So I thought to myself, I wonder what it would have been compared to 2017 in the thickness. Because if David Dilley's predictions are correct and that cooler water is going to be underneath the ice, not allowing it to melt as it was through the last 3 pulse water cycles, we should be seeing thicker ice. 2017. And you're thinking, David, I wish you would put those together. So I did. Here we go. Right side is 2018, July 7th. Left side is 2017, July 7th. Now I want you to notice right in the center there over the North Pole, literally around 90 degrees north latitude. Notice the big red striation in 2018. That is still 13, 14 foot thick sea ice comparatively to what was in 2017. Also notice northern Greenland and that coastal area still have that red there, but the yellow is much thicker in its band. And remember that yellow is at least 10 to 11 feet thick, 3+ meters. And I'll let you pause the chart here because this is just in your face, huge difference from just a single year. And when this new pulse is going up, bringing in all this cool water, and we're having this rapid of an onset of thickening ice, this is not going to melt. You cannot tell me that by the end of the melt season coming up in less than 2 months, that 12-foot thick ice is going to melt. And that'll be a nice base for next year's ice to start to nucleate around. Coming over here, European Space Agency also showing some sea ice, but they don't exactly give you the coordinates of where it is in that coastal area. I'm going to say it was in that same area, west of Greenland, northern Canada up there. But you have to think that this is coastal ice. This should be the first ice that's melting. And here we are, what, July 8th, and it's still this thick? Interesting. Because in 1999, this would have been totally gone already. Absolutely gone and melted away because of the difference in the sea surface temperatures and the water being pushed under the ice. Now let's see, this is where the two worlds combine. I'm in firm belief that the governments of our world are going to try to limit what you can purchase, but they're going to want to track everything that you purchase as we get ready for this grand solar minimum. We're into the rollover years right now where there's still that push and pull between the global warming crowd and the person's talking about global cooling and the different mini ice age and grand solar minimum. I mean, this is probably the 1 to 2 year period where both sets of information are coming out. They're contradictory, but soon it's going to be very apparent in your face that we are moving into cooling, and this affects our crops, and this in turn affects all food prices. So let's jump over here. Digital wealth management market size. Global is at the bottom here. It's not really digital wealth management. Let's just change that word digital into cryptocurrency wealth management. That's less than 4 years away. So what are the gains going to be in this? And that's one thing I want to talk about first is the governments want their taxes, period. And that'll be the first layer of the onion, if you will. Now we need to strip back another layer because Bitcoin itself, eventually with the AI algorithms, they're going to be able to backtrack every single transaction hash and get their taxes. Guaranteed, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but 5 years, 6 years out in the line, for sure, they'll be able to have some algorithm running back and making sure you pay your taxes. CBOE, any kind of Bitcoin futures, of course it's going to be taxed. You got to go through an exchange to get that. ETFs, exchange traded funds, of course, it's right in the stock market. They're going to get their taxes, not a problem. Now, taxes and your ability to prepare for this and tracking your purchases, this is all different categories here. So let's start with first Syscoin. This is the third anonymity coin in the last 2 months to be targeted. This was targeted with an API push versus a 51% attack. A little bit different. Binance shut everything off, stopped the transactions, but still there was an enormous amount of Syscoin stolen at that time. So if you're unfamiliar with what anonymity coins are, because you just heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe Tether, this is a list of the current top anonymity coins. Now the ones I circled in yellow are the ones that have been attacked. Now you have to realize Verge had over $1 billion market cap when it had its 51% attack. Syscoin just a couple days ago, and Zencash, which was the baby darling, bringing all the best tech from all of the spheres and spectrums of crypto into an anonymity form. Zencash, that was 4th generation. That was so far ahead of everything else, and it straight away got attacked. You have to think about which others will be next. There's a concerted effort to knock these coins off. And I can't think any other way that it's government sponsored, because they do not want these anonymity coins out there. Taxes are one thing, but you preparing for the grand solar minimum and you buying food, long-term food storage, water filtration, whatever it is, our governments want to know what you're buying so they can come and take it when the time comes. Now, I talked about 51% attacks. You have to overtake a network, and it takes a certain amount of money and a certain amount of hashing power and a certain share of that network's hash to get this 51% attack, and then you can reverse transactions, you can add in new code, you can double spend, you can do an enormous amount of things to create fraud within that blockchain. So just taking a look at Bitcoin Gold, this was another one that was touted to offer some level of at least anonymity inside it. Zencash, Verge, again, that was $1 billion market cap. Now at the bottom where it says crypto51.com, this was a full rundown on every single coin and how much it would take you dollar-wise and how many hours it would to put one of these 51% attacks on any coin out on the market or token. But that website has been turned off for some reason. Now these are proof of work, not proof of stake, a little bit different. So when we talk about POW attacks, proof of work, so how much will it cost in attacking a network, take it over, send it a bunch of fraudulent transactions? About this much. Bitcoin, at least $500,000 per hour. Again, you're not going to be able to take over so much of the network because there's so many miners out there. So you got to come down to think about where the mining power is sort of centralized more into just a few hands, because Bitcoin, I mean, it's spread worldwide. People are mining everywhere. There's centralized mining all through Iceland, China. It used to be China. They moved to Vietnam. But look at Zcash down there. It's only cost you $50,000 an hour, and you can take over at least 24% of the network. And if you keep banging at it day after day, I'm sure you could take over 51% eventually. Zcash is another anonymity transaction medium. Now, Japan coming right out, banning outright all cryptocurrencies with a sufficient degree of anonymity. They're not saying 100% anonymity coins. See, that's very different. A sufficient degree of anonymity falls right back into Bitcoin Gold. And there's so many others that fall into this very loose definition of degree of anonymity. That could even, Bitcoin could fall under that. I mean, that pretty much leaves you what? Ripple to transact in? Now back to the tax issues here, and also you all preparing for the grand solar minimum out there. Millennials are not buying gold. They don't trust the stock market. They absolutely distrust the banks. When they were growing up, they saw the tumultuous times at the banking fiasco in 2008 with TARP and never-ending quantitative easing. They grew up during that time. They trust nothing that's centralized control. All their money for their highest earning years, that's going straight into crypto. What do I mean by that? These prime income years, boomers, they're all retiring right now. That's that light blue line. If you're over 35, you're in that gray line straight in the center. We're kind of peaking out here for earning. But look who's up and coming, the millennials. That dark blue line, none of that money sees a bank. Very little of that money sees a stock market. Almost all that money off that dark blue line, cryptocurrency. So I want to bring you back here to the solar activity forecast, because this is what it's really all about. It seems there's a concerted effort to deny you another avenue to prepare for this grand solar minimum, at least anonymously. Solar activity, I combined two different charts here. This is from the Pulkovo Observatory on the right, compared to what was our past solar activity through the grand solar minimums, through the solar cycles, through the centuries. Now, running it out on the right is where we are going. 50 sunspots or below is the call from John Casey over the next solar cycle. I'm staying with John Casey, not NASA. John has been the most correct. I appreciate his work. That man has sacrificed more than you can possibly imagine in his life to get you this information. I believe his forecasts are the most correct. That's why I made these charts based on 50 sunspots. Now, a lot of you go, well, that's distorted at the end. That doesn't make sense. I can't. Okay, let's bring it in for you. So up to the year 2045, this is what our solar activity looks like. And going back in a history book, let's just put up the time frames here in the 1650s, Maunder minimum. Our crops are definitely going to be affected. They are starting to be now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your food prices are rising, and you might ask why. This chart explains most of it. Also, with the ice core drilling, I want you to see where were the massive volcanic eruptions that were locked in ice as a trace on the cycles. Do you see the volcanic ash layer in this ice core? Over on the right, light tan. Okay, these are cycles also. This is what I'm trying to trace down, is how frequently do these layers of ash get deposited, and are they on a frequency that can be forecast? Also digging through Karim's feeds, he's got some amazing, amazing images there of ice cores and also what's going on where they're drilling up on the east grip. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, the media's not been telling you, there's this much extra ice this year being formed on the ice budget on Greenland. We were told it's melting into oblivion. Now, the blue line is where we are right now. Well above the average, so far above the average that it doesn't make sense. And we should be talking about this in the media because it seems like, at least in part, the Greenland ice cap is going to start recovering. Also, this comes from Danish Meteorological Institute. The right side is the 1981 to 2010 average melt, if you will, for July 7th. Left side is where we are today. And again, I'll let you pause the screen because the amount of melting that they're telling you in the media right now is all-time record hottest. The earth bakes. It's a cooking oven. How is it that Greenland is completely below the normal on the melt then? And for those of you in Europe, your heat wave's about to come to a rapid end. That tropical storm, or whatever it's turning into as it reaches more north, comes across Greenland. It's going to swing down, and then your temperatures are going to drop something like 6 to 10 degrees Celsius. So that heat wave that the media is talking about is created by global warming. What suddenly ceases when a new storm comes by. And also look way far north above Norway up there. Look how cool it is comparatively. And also coming back to growing your own food. Karim also put out these amazing photos of what they're cooking up at the ice core drilling station. You got to realize, this is Greenland, icy, never-ending landscapes, yet they're able to prepare this type of food. And you have to wonder, what are they sprouting up there as well? Because they're not bringing everything in every day. Sometimes they get locked out for 2 weeks at a time due to storms. They're sprouting. You could too. TrueLeafMarket.com. Adapt 2030 link is in the description box below. Which brings me back right to the preparedness part here. This is the absolute shocker. Why did Obama nationalize the U.S. food supply? This is Executive Order 13603. It's the National Defense Resources Preparedness. Executive order, if you will. Now what this says is during military conflicts, natural or man-made, man-caused disasters, or acts of terrorism within the United States, natural disaster, a grand solar minimum, would be deemed as such. The U.S. government is able to confiscate anything it needs to keep itself continuity of government moving forward. Period. Food resources include all potable water. So if you have water stored for yourself, they can come in and say, we need this for the military to keep us going. We need this for that shelter that we set up down the road because we don't have all the resources we need. Thanks for stockpiling it. Thanks for using your credit card to show us where it was stored. We're going to take it. This executive order grants the government authority to acquire anything. So here's the most important thing. Do not flag yourself with debit cards, credit cards, And here we come, anonymity coins. Why do you think the government's really ramping down on these anonymity coins? They know that in the future they can backtrack some of your Bitcoin transactions if it is. Maybe some of the less known networks. But I want to bring you back in history. 6 million perished in the Soviet famine. What happened there? Oh, the government came in and seized all the farm equipment, the animals, and the food, and just left everybody there with nothing. It's happened in history before. It is going to happen again. Choose wisely when you're purchasing something. That's truly what this video is all about, is trying to combine these two worlds. These changes are in our face right now, so stark. And you can see how the government's starting to, put the tentacles on to try to limit the way that you can buy or sell or prepare for these events. Now they're even coming down into the cryptocurrency world to try to limit even that your anonymity purchases. Cash now has nanochips in it. They know when it comes out of an ATM that it's linked to your thing. So when you go in and use that $100 bill or $50 bill and then you go in and buy something, they know what it's linked to in your transaction because they're tracking cash now. This is your last true avenue to anonymity. Which one of these that you see here would you use to stay anonymous? Monero and Dash. Those others that you see, they track. Now see, the whole thing about Bitcoin originally was to provide a peer-to-peer version of electronic cash without having to go through the banking system. And on another pincer coming in of asphyxiation of our freedoms, sovereign cryptocurrencies, meaning a cryptocurrency issued by a government for its national currency. You think that might be, oh, they'll never do that. That'll take too long. Well, let's look at the list of how many here. Tunisia, the e-dinar. Sweden, developing its own e-krona. Palestine, they have very little access to what's considered the financial world anyway, so they're trying to create the Palestinian pound. Kyrgyzstan, they're going to do a national cryptocurrency backed with gold. What do we got? Senegal, this is going to be the ECFA, and they're going to try to bring in all the underbanked or unbanked population. Now, you got to realize they're starting in Senegal, but this is going to go right over to Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, Niger, Burkina Faso, and everything West Africa. All national currencies, cryptocurrencies. And then we have the Marshall Islands preparing its own cryptocurrency. And you thought it was small island nations and little economies. No, Canada's going to do it too. CAD coin, and then there's talk of the US government doing a Fed coin, and they are going to try to force you to use the Fed coin, and they're going to force you to turn in your paper to get Fed coin money. And if you don't, your little paper will be worthless. Estcoin with Estonia going at it as well. The list just keeps going and going. We got Scotcoin for Scotland, Argentina, the Peseta coin from Spain, not really in its national banks yet, but planning to. Now the Bank of England's going to launch its own cryptocurrency, RS coin. Hong Kong Central Bank trialing its own digital currency. Singapore as well. What about the domestic interbank payments using the Singapore dollar equivalent? What they have for private blockchains moving forward? They're trying to do away with all of your ability as an individual citizen to transact outside the what we consider traditional entrenched monetary system with central banking, government issuance of debt. They're going to try to rein and reel that all back in so you come back under the same exact control mechanisms. Let's take a look here at some of the private blockchains that are being unveiled. Bank of Canada, Singapore as well. Singapore's spearheading this. They're so far ahead of everybody else. Hong Kong as well. Well, this is moving through Asia first. You all over in the West are going to be the last to get this. You're going to be miles behind by the time you even hear about most of these moving forward. Especially Corda. Keep an eye on that one. And the central banks and governments will say, it's for your own protection. Bitcoin's so volatile, people are going to lose their investments. Well, yeah, how much money did people lose in 2008 and 9? How many people were made homeless because of that? Oh, you protected us so well. Thank you for doing such a great job in 2008 and 9. We came out of that unscathed because of your protective hands, enveloping the markets and protecting all of us citizens from bad things that could happen. Not. But they'll keep trying to sell you the same thing of, oh, we need to protect you, it's too volatile. But they forget to talk about how volatile gold was. How quickly we forget our history. And now look what's going to be next. I'm calling this that eventually they're going to try to outlaw this new business model that's coming through with the cryptocurrency exchanges themselves. Okay, we understood all the ICOs are being incredibly regulated. So what's the new business model? Exchanges are issuing their own tokens so they could be utilized inside their own ecosystem so it doesn't count as a security outside in the ICO world. People are making vast fortunes doing this. Think about if you would have got Binance coin. That thing was 12 cents just last year. Now it's $13. Now this is all based on the amount of value that you can get inside the exchange, buy, sell, trade. Now this also includes those anonymity coins. Take a look at the exchanges that are offering the most anonymity coins and you'll see the ones that they're having some incredible volume on them. So Coinbene, they're going to be issuing their own coin. What about BitZ? How about BitOEX up in Taiwan? How about Fcoin? This is the Huobi folks that are doing that. What about the Ocean? This is a new one you want to keep your eyes on as well. And this is in no way, shape, or form investment advice for any of you out there. This is just looking at a trend in the future. Hey, look at that Model T Ford. I think we're going to go away from horse transportation and start using these vehicles that burn fuel. It's the same thing. We're looking at a trend. This is a new business model. The more those exchanges create in volume, the more money you make by holding their tokens. This has gone around all the rules set by the SEC. The ICOs, they don't have to issue it. They're just issuing their own native token like an airline mile, if you will. This is the new play. This is what's going to try to be regulated next. The dominoes fall where the money goes. People in crypto are smart. They're outdoing and they're maneuvering 2 or 3 steps ahead of federal governments. Now, as soon as the federal government plays catch up 3 steps behind, they're like, oh, that's going to be illegal now. You can't use a token of your own issuance inside your own platform and let people trade anonymously. That ain't going to happen. We're going to come in and regulate it. So watch how many of these are going to be regulated in the future. So if you're transacting with any of these 3 on the screen, you're being tracked. If you're using any of these on the screen, you have a great chance of being able to prepare for the grand solar minimum without Big Brother knowing what you're buying. And I truly want to bring you back here. This solar activity should be a stark wake-up call for you. We are going back into something we have not seen in 400 years. You need to prepare. And again, I will say you better choose wisely in how you transact so you can buy without people knowing what you're buying. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. I also run the weekly podcast, Mini Ice Age Conversations, where I post 3 to 4 times a week, longer, more in-depth commentary with interesting guests, all about the grand solar minimum, where we're going with food pricing. And please remember to subscribe and click that bell if you got value out of this video. I'm trying to grow the audience on the road to 100,000 subscribers. Help me get there. The social media feeds that I do go through, especially Twitter and Facebook, there's a constant roll going on there, posting about every 3 hours, things that I don't normally put in the videos, but when I'm researching a video, I'll actually grab those links and still throw them in, even though I don't highlight it here or screen grab something to show you. There's an enormous amount of value in those feeds there. Adapt 2030 on Twitter and Mini Ice Age on Facebook.